Hey guys, so I'm in my garden. I'm doing research for my description and my labels for the new electrolyte powder that is holistic, it is whole. And right now I'm focusing on maple syrup, and I'm just going to share some of just the beginning from some papers that I've gathered on maple syrup. There's always so much depth to go into on these papers, but here on TikTok I'm going to keep this rather short and just go into a little bit of the beginning on maple syrup. I love maple syrup. It contains minerals such as calcium, magnesium, iron, manganese, zinc, even aluminum, which is in its compounded formula, not in its free form, not refined, which is where it gets dangerous. Aluminum is the third most common element around. Now we also have sodium, we've got potassium. It's got amino acids, arginine, threonine, proline, etc. It's got phytohormones, niacin, thiamine, riboflavin. So we've got B complex here. Now this is all for educational and entertainment purposes only. This is just according to NIH.gov. So this is according to the internet. This is all my opinion for educational and entertainment purposes only. So it says other compounds in maple syrup in its whole form presents positive influence on human health through various biological properties. And then you can see these properties right here. Then it says, noting that such properties have been principally evidenced only in vitro, often on isolated compounds, and rarely using maple syrup as a whole component. So what it's saying is that synthetically, when they've isolated these things out, they have been able to see the properties that these things have. However, then it's also synthetic, which has its own issues. But what it's saying is that you can get these things as well without being synthetic just by using maple syrup as a whole component. So when it comes to education on synthetics and why we don't want them, a place where they are concentrated are in my Patreon, so I will leave that information at the end of the video. I've gotten in a lot of trouble on this app by going in depth on some synthetic, so I'm going to skip that. It says, in contrast, carbohydrates are the main dietary component of maple syrup. And it must be recognized that the potential health benefits, as noted above, may be partially offset. So it may be partially offset by the link between carbohydrate consumption and diseases such as diabetes and obesity. It's not saying for sure. It is not saying for sure. In light of these contrasting attributes. See, that's the thing about getting God's whole nature when it's in the whole form, as mentioned before. Maple syrup as a whole component instead of isolating things out. The rules change, in my opinion. Wink, wink, wink. In light of these contrasting attributes, there is growing interest in better characterizing the bioactive properties of maple syrup with respect to the overall implications for human health. Although several previous studies have focused on the nutritional importance of maple syrup by studying its pharmacological properties, because every single one of those starts from nature. It's always copied off of nature. Once again, this is just my opinion. To date, a review synthesizing the current state of knowledge on the nutraceutical characteristics of maple syrup, so it's telling you what nutraceuticals are, in my opinion, wink, 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 has not been performed. A goal of this review, the first on this subject, is to provide a detailed report on the nutritional, organoleptic, and physiological roles of maple syrup compounds, to inform about the use of maple syrup in the human diet, not maple syrup isolates, which would be the S word I mentioned earlier, maple syrup compounds, to inform about the use of maple syrup in the human diet, and to serve as a resource that will help to guide future studies on assessing such properties in maple syrup. And then it says, we conducted a Google Scholar search. So in this NIH paper webpage, we conducted a Google Scholar search to identify references containing information on the nutritional. This is what I do for my consultations, what it's saying that it's doing right here. This is what I do for my products and for my clients. We conducted a Google Scholar search to identify references containing information on the nutritional, organoleptic, I read that part already. We used single or combinatorial searches on keywords such as maple syrup, nutrition, nutritional potentials, pharmacological and sensory properties, functional properties, health benefits, bioavailability, etc. For each identified paper, we then reviewed the references therein to determine if additional relevant references could be identified. This is exactly what I do. The initial research yielded 105 papers, from which 95 were selected for consideration in the present review. There is always research that can be done on God's original nature. These papers are always really, really long, so I'm going to do a few more slides, and then I'm going to get on with working on my description and getting my labels done for the new electrolyte powder. So it says, recent trends in the search for improved dietary nutrition have principally focused on the nutritional potential of natural foods, with current recommendations for healthy diets highlighting the need for greater ingestion of natural foods containing these things, rather than foods in which these specific nutrients are supplemented exogenously. So let's look at exogenously really quick. Exogenously. It means originating, produced, or introduced from the outside an organism's system or body. It says like medication or nutrients taken into the body, as opposed to being created internally, which is what we always want to aim for. For instance, we want glutathione to be produced in the body as opposed to taking quote-unquote glutathione. So what it's saying is that the recent trends in the search for improved dietary nutrition are focused on the nutritional potential of natural foods with current recommendations for healthy diets. It's saying that they want to focus on what the body is going to make internally by getting things in their whole form that contain antioxidants, vitamins, nutrients, and elements, as opposed to, for example, I'm going to give you an example because a lot of people say, what is the S word that I mentioned earlier? I have to be careful with that word. SY blank, 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 blank. They say, what is this? What does it mean? There's a lot of people that will hold up a supplement and say, this is not synthetic, and all the while they're holding up a synthetic supplement. It means if calcium is in maple syrup, I'm not taking a supplement that's called calcium. I am rather using maple syrup. That is a natural food containing the vitamins and nutrients. And this supports endogenous nutrition instead of specific nutrients supplemented exogenously. It says honey and plant-based foods such as maple syrup or agave nectar are available as natural alternatives to refined sugars. Unrefined sugars generally have a higher levels of antioxidants, which we need for cellular healing. We need to mop up toxins, for example, if parasites are dying off, etc., etc. We need to combat certain agendas targeting our body, similar to the disparity between whole and refined grain products, meaning whole grain products are going to have more antioxidants than refined grain products, just like unrefined sweeteners are going to have more antioxidants than refined sweeteners.